that in Modern. Hasn't really made its way into Legacy just yet, though I imagine Carson Cotter's probably got something working there. And now Ian Barber, blue-green morph, 6-0.
No Icefall even, which is disappointing to me.
No, not yet. None of those in here. We'll get to the sideboard when we do have a moment, but we're underway here in game number 1. Boswell with just a Mana Confluence and passing the turn. Barber has a Forest, and he'll pass the turn back.
And keep in mind, this is the 6-0 bracket.
Yeah, no, this means
this is not.
Ian didn't have 2 buys.
Yeah, this is not some. Oh, we got this cute deck on at 2-1. We'll get him on camera. No, this is 6-0.
Fleece main line here for the boss, as usual. The man loves a green and white spell. Here's an island. That's a Rattleclaw Mystic. Pass the turn back. And this is actually going to be one of those times where if Ian plays a morph, Boswell won't know what it is.
Correct.
Which we don't see a lot of in Constructed Magic. It's a welcome change when the morph mechanic actually kind of works the way that they want it to. Fleece main line's coming in. 3 damage going to be dealt. Temple of Silence here for Boswell. He'll scry. Take a look at that top card. Becomes the bottom card. The follow-up is a Fleece main line.
I think Patrick Chapin on the premium side wrote recently about secret plans and actually almost playing a morph-centric deck at the Pro Tour.
Correct. He tested it a lot. He wrote that in his premium article this week. Wasn't quite good enough, unfortunately, which is disappointing because I think it'd be really cool if there was a good morph deck.
Well, it's also one of those things where you have just a very small timetable to figure out these things. And when you have to decide between this morph deck where maybe you didn't put in as much work as you would like versus Abzan Control, which has been tested and tuned by everyone on the planet for months and months on end.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier just to play the Abzan Control deck.
Super easy to just play the Abzan deck. 6 damage is going to come across. Barber's down to 11. He's underneath a lot of pressure because now Boswell's going to play a Siege Rhino, and he had better have some sort of way to get this thing off the table. Some sort of counterspell or something. There's Collected Company. That'll be the response. So
I was hoping it was Mystic Snake.
Yeah. That'd be fun and awkward for a couple of reasons. So Collected Company is going to take a look at the top 6. Put 2 creature cards with a converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. Elvish Mystic. And it looks like just a... And then Quickling. Excuse me.
Combo.
Sort of. No, I think you just used
Quickling
combo
and
wrong.
another creature as a combo?
I think you just used combo wrong. So there is Quickling. Not really going to stand up to what's on the board.
If I'm Boswell, I'm thinking that I am either winning the game next turn or dying this turn. Because Ian's start here is suggesting that his deck might be able to go off.
Yes. That's a fair thought.
Right. If I'm in Boswell's seat, I'm worried that I'm just dead this turn somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know how, but...
Are you some sort of weird combo deck I've never seen
Exactly.
before? You're 6-0. What are you up to? When reality is Ian Strauss is not very good this game. And he's being outclassed in a bad way.
Yep. Sometimes the story is much simpler than the one you make up in your own head.
Yes. So. There's a Forest. There's an Heir of the Wilds. At least the good blockers here.
All right, now Boswell's probably thinking I'm not dying this turn.
Probably not. No.
Probably not.
No. Now here's a Morph too. I think the boss knows he's probably pretty safe, sitting comfortably here.
Andrew's usually pretty stone-faced at the table, but he cracked a little smile there.
A little bit. Not too scared about what's going on this side of the table. At least not this game.
Sideboarding is going to be a hoot.
I like to know Boz's win-loss record with sleeves versus no sleeves.
You mean on the arms?
Yeah. What else could I be talking about?
I mean, the deck, I guess.
And when we're talking about Boswell and sleeves, it never has to do with decks.
Yeah, sleeveless.
Okay. I'd want to know his win-loss ratio when he has sleeves and to when he doesn't have sleeves.
Yeah, now with the winter thawing in Sugarloaf, New York.
It's really nice outside now.
Yeah, you can just be sleeveless all the time.
The walk from the hotel this morning was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Boss trying to figure out the best way to attack in this situation.
Yeah, he does have Tremoka's Command in his hand, so he's got a couple options here. One kind of easy, straightforward one is just attack with everything and intend on using the monsters on the Fleece main line in the event that Ian puts a Heir of the Wilds in front of it. If Ian fails to put Heir of the Wilds in front of one of the Fleece main lines, Andrew is probably just trucking along for too much damage this turn.
Yeah.
If Ian does something funky with his blocks, then maybe Dromoka's command can win the game this turn.
There are your blocks.
Andrew can also go, okay, sure, that's fine, and cast the Fleece main line and Burmass that's in his hand. So he's got a lot of he's got great options this turn. It's just a matter of which one.
I think there are no bad avenues to victory here for Boswell. Let me get a basic forest off his Windswept Heath. So perhaps it is Dromoka's command time. Looks like it is. So put +1/+1 on that Fleece main line. And probably fight the Heir of the Wilds to let the Siege Rhino trample over for what's likely lethal damage. The Morph was going to be a Stratus Dancer, which is what Ian is revealing. This is very clearly a concession. Andrew Boswell is going to win Kingdom 1 here off the back of a nice curve and a Dromoka's command.
Yep. Against an opponent who was kind of fumbling around there a little bit.
To be sure. Andrew Boswell wins game 1 here over Ian Barber. I was on aggro, up a game over blue-green morph, which means I get to look at the blue-green morph sideboard. I'm looking for some spice. But actually, I'm just going to find some normal stuff here. There's a Court of Calling. There's a 4th Den Protector. A 4th Stratus Dancer. 2 Encased in Ice, 2 Mistcutter Hydra, 4 Hornet Nest, and 4 Naylee's Disciple.
So Encased in Ice seems great for this matchup. A lot of green creatures in Andrew's deck. He's trying to attack. Those are easy. I think that the Naylee's Disciples could come in this matchup. I know it's not a burn matchup, but I think that Ian has a reasonable game plan here of present a curve of flyers and use Naylee's Disciple to shore up the counter swing. So I think Encased in Ice definitely comes in, and it's possible the Naylee's Disciples come in as well. Hornet Nest could come in here as well, but Boswell's deck just has a lot of Heroes Downfall style effects, so it's not as good here as it is against something like Mono Red.
What do we see on the other side of things?
A Thoughtseize, 2 copies of Duress, 2 copies of Hunt the Hunter, 3 copies of Valorous Stands, 3 copies of Drowned Sorrow, a Sorum Solemn Visitor, 2 copies of Nissa Worldwaker, and a Ajani Mentor of Heroes. Great options here for Boswell. 2 copies of Hunt the Hunter seem really good for this matchup. 3 copies of Drowned Sorrow as well. Ian was presenting nothing but small creatures and morphs, so Drowned Sorrow seems great here. I think the Soaring can come in as well. The game's likely to be some sort of tempo damage race sort of affair, and either cranking out 2/2 flyers or giving his board +1/+0 and lifelink. Both seem powerful to me.
So some good options here for the boss.
Very good.
Well, we will talk about SCG game night here while these players do get ready and shuffle up. Of course, we do have our kittens on our lapels.
Everyone's favorite token too, or at least the consensus opinion best token so far. The kitten, this is the April kit. Every month we generate a new token and pin. We give them out in the kits. The stores can set up these game nights however they want to, whatever day of the week, sanctioned or unsanctioned, any format, just to get players in your store for some fun and friendly gaming. This is the April kit. We have the May kit that's up and ready to go. This is the bees. Too late to get signed up for the May kit, but if your store is looking to get signed up in June, we have the June kit ready to go. These are the bunnies, and you can head over to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information and to find where the nearest store that hosts game night is to you.
If you want your store to host it, go to Star City Games. Get in touch with your store owner. It's not hard to do.
Very easy to get set up. We have an experienced, organized play team that can get a kit over to you. We just need a little bit of lead time because it takes us some time to mail these things out. And so, again, a little too late to get signed up for May, but June, head over right now and get signed up.
So earlier, Patrick and I were discussing game night, which led us to talk about the May kit, which is the bee, and I was discussing about the bee truck that tipped over.
In Washington State.
Yeah, about 10 or 15 minutes from where I live. And we had said it was 4 million bees. Incorrect.
We have an up-to-date head count.
Yeah, I believe it was, the number that I'm reading right now is 14 million, which makes...
It's funny because in one respect, it's not really appreciably more bees because it's millions of bees either way. And on the other hand, it's 10 million more bees than we thought there were before. So that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
That's my nightmare. That's it.
Like 4 million bees are coming at you, and someone's like, by the way, there's 10 million more bees that are coming.
A semi-truck rolled Friday morning, spilling a load of bees worth $92,000 on Interstate 5. Really, really nice. Right at Interstate Change. I can't do this. This is too much. The bees just...
Could you imagine being behind that truck?
No, I can't.
The truck tips over and you pound on the brakes and you're like, oh my God, I hope the truck driver's okay. And then the bees start spilling out. I mean, that is a really stressful situation.
The first thing I would do is roll up my windows and then close the vents of my car.
Just throw it in reverse and drive backwards on the freeway.
Yeah. I seriously have no idea what I would do. No clue. Oh, fortunately, so apparently the wreck happened at 3:30 a.m., which is important because from what I read here, the bees, as temperatures warmed and the bees became more agitated, firefighters sprayed a mixture of foam and water on the hives to slow down or kill some of the bees. So if it got warmer, if the sun came up, that's when they get really mad.
Yes.
And then it's game on.
Well, they become more active.
Yeah, that's when it's showtime. So they're shipped chilled. I didn't know that.
Okay, that seems like a pretty smart thing to do from a safety perspective.
Sure.
You're the truck driver, and you walk in the truck, and you just hear infinite bees buzzing behind you. Pretty stressful, I think.
You have to transport this.
Yeah. Don't tip it over. And whatever you do, don't open up the back.
Unbelievable.
14 million bees is just so many of them.
They saved 128 hives before the sun came up.
I also love the term agitated to describe 14 million bees.
To say the least.
We got bad news and worse news. Bad news is there's 14 million bees, and the worst move is they're becoming agitated.
This world we live in sometimes is it's really great. We just talk about magic for a living. There are people who transport bees for a living.
So,
Yeah, there he is. There's the old boy.
now that is an agitated bee right there.
Yeah, that's right.
You know how you know it's agitated? It's got a sword and a shield.
Warden of the First Tree is the play here for Boswell. My go-to is typically the giant dust wasp when I think of a bee.
Yep, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
The killer bees one is so funny because it's just this hairy bee with a sword and a shield. Not a card that I believe would get approved under Magic's current art direction.
Probably not.
Below the standards.
Heir of the Wilds here for Barber.
Heir of the Wilds is one of the cards that Boswell pointed to as being the reasons that he shelved Abzan Aggro for a little while, feeling like he had better cards than other aggressive decks, but his cards kept trading. And Heir of the Wilds, even though it's not as powerful objectively as something like Fleece Mane Lion, still trades just the same. He said, his Heir of Wilds would trade with his Fleece Mane Lion, and then someone's Boon Satyr would trade with his Anafenza, and he was just having a lot of games where he felt like his cards were better, but it didn't actually matter very much. Now, back playing the old deck.
One of the first number 2 there for Boswell. A card that he is a huge fan of. 4 copies in his Abzan Aggro deck. You see some players sometimes playing 2, some people playing none. But Boswell's always been a big fan, as here is Boon Satyr. This will allow Heir of the Wilds to attack, and it is a 3/3 because of the Ferocious trigger.
Just combos left and right today.
So Barber's deck is coughing up a better draw this game, as he did much of nothing the last game.
The big problem, I think, in the post-board games here for Ian is his deck is very susceptible to Drown in Sorrow. And I don't think he has a lot to shore up that weakness besides Stratus Dancer. That's really his one card. Other than that, he's just pumping out a curve of mostly 2 toughness and 1 toughness creatures.
And that's a really expensive way to try to turn off Drown in Sorrow, too.
Yeah, it's not mana efficient. There's going to be spots where that can happen, but it's not a reliable game plan by any stretch.
Temple of Mystery, the draw here for Barber. See if the blue-green morph deck can pull off an upset here. It's already down a game. It's got it back against the wall. Better draw here, though. See if it's time for Barber to come into the red zone here in a bit.
Looks like a good spot to attack. The best thing that Boswell can do on the table is just block and trade with one of the threats. So something comes through.
Boswell going to figure out which creature he wants to block with a Warden of the First Tree. He'll attempt to block the Boon Satyr. We'll see an activation, of course, of the Heir of the Wilds. He'll turn into a 3/3. It's level 1 now. That'll work. So the trade will take place. 3 damage will come across. See, Barber wants to make sure he knows exactly how Ward of the First Tree works.
Yeah, Boswell just pumping it there to a 3/3 to trade with the Boon Satyr. Nothing too fancy going on.
Let's see what Barber's follow-up is. We know he has an Elvish Mystic in hand. I believe he has a Den Protector as well. He'll start by playing a copy of Manic Influence. There is Elvish Mystic. Now the follow-up is a Morph. Again, the interesting thing is because Boswell is playing against a deck and a player he's never seen before, he doesn't really have any idea what this morph is. Again, it could be Stratus Dancer, it could be Den Protector, it could be Rattleclaw Mystic, it could be Death Mist Raptor. A lot of options in the blue-green deck.
And there's a bunch of viable morphs to choose from, too. I go back to the Icefall even a lot as a card that I think could easily slot into a deck like this.
Yeah.
And be very powerful in a bunch of spots in this kind of matchup. Might make Boswell nervous about doing something like, I'll tap out for Burmaz, you know?
And there is Burmaz. Sandsep Citadel and passing of the turn. $18-12 in favor of Barber. Let's see if he can keep it going.
Still very, very vulnerable to Drown in Sorrow.
Yes.
That's going to be the case probably for the whole game.
There are the attacks.
Please meet by the side event registration station. Again, players in Commander event.
Again, it's unclear what the morph is. Heir of the Wild's just a 2/2.
So the Heir of the Wild's going to attack for free here, and the morph is where things get really tricky, because this could be all sorts of things. It's possible that Ian just has something like a Boon Satyr, and the morph doesn't really unmorph into anything huge, in which case Boswell really wants to double block. The other side of it is that morph could even be something like Sagu Mauler, and in that case, you just probably don't want to block at all.
Yep, but you're not sure what it is.
Exactly, and so Boswell's got to take his best guess of, does this mean that Ian has a pump spell in his hand, he's just attacking with any morph, or does that morph do something that allows it to play into the Burmaz? Death Mist Raptor is another card that makes a lot of sense in this spot, because it has Death Touch.
And see, this is where morph is really cool.
Though possibly, if it was Death Mist Raptor, Ian would have unmorphed before combat, so he had a 4-power creature, so Heir of the Wilds would get an issue. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a ton of layers.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing for Boswell might be just to say no blocks.
Oh, that's definitely the easiest thing to do.
Which is what he just did. He said, I can't figure this out. I'll just no blocks. Please don't make it hurt too much. Now here's another morph.
As if it wasn't tricky before.
Yeah. It's only getting harder now. Boswell will draw to copy Hero's Downfall.
And his hand's just a little clunky. We do see this with the Abzan aggro deck from time to time of just lands coming into play tapped and not having some efficient way to break serve because a lot of the removal is still 3 mana. And Boswell just kind of behind here. Even though he had multiple copies of Warden, he had some early plays. He just hasn't been as efficient as Ian has been thus far.
Boswell going to turn his creature sideways. Gets a cat token too. Looks like this morph is going to block. We'll see what it wants to block. Tough to guess right now.
I think blocking the cat token is a freebie, basically.
Pretty safe stuff.
Just how good would Icefall even be in this spot?
You love it.
How good would it be right now?
You love it.
The game would be over. You'd have to ring the bell.
It would be quite good, actually.
You can also just cast it on turn 2. It's 2/2 flyer for 2. It's not bad to cast.
Gaius Skyfall. There's a Warden. And an Offensive. So Boswell daring Barber to do something powerful. Might see a Stratus Dancer get unmorphed here. Let's see. It's going to be Den Protector.
This is pretty good. Moonsaider's not a bad one to get back right now.
Not at all. With the Megamorph, as long as he remembers the counter, which is really important there, actually. I don't think that he did. He's just going to... And we'll see if he gets the counter or not, because it's...
Yeah, I don't know if it's mandatory.
Yep. And put a +1/+1 counter on it. See, we'll see how the judge rules this situation, because if he doesn't get the counter, he's going to end up a point short.
Yep. Because he can use the Den Protector's first sentence is pertinent here, because creatures, it can't be blocked. So it's 7 coming across uncontested.
Correct.
And yeah, I think the judge is saying it just has to happen.
Yep. And that's what will be in question in this situation. Now, if that's the ruling that is made, Boswell is obviously allowed to appeal if he'd like to. And we'll see what does happen in this situation, but pretty straightforward stuff on what Barber's looking to accomplish. He's going to reveal his other morph, which was a Stratus Dancer. So that's going to get the job done.
And I think that Boswell, that turn, played his creatures there instead of trying to go for the Hero's Downfall out of respect for the possibility of Stratus Dancer, trying to lock up the ground there. But Ian actually had both morphs, both Den Protector and Stratus Walker, so he had to cover, Stratus Dancer rather, so he had it covered on both sides.
Yeah. 1-1. Morphs ties it up.
And that whole game, Ian did win, we're going to game 3, but that whole game, he's so vulnerable to Drown in Sargo. It wouldn't surprise me if Boswell starts actually mulliganing some bad but keepable hands, because Drown in Sorrow seems so good that he has a huge catch-up.
Well, we'll find out here in just a moment. Both these players are going to get back to the drawing board. It looks like Barber's got something he wants to change since he's on the draw here for game number 3. So we'll talk about our Season 2 schedule here really quickly. Of course, we did Syracuse. Chris Van Meter won that show. We're in Providence right now. We don't know who's going to win that one, but next weekend, we're in Cleveland.
Yeah, we head to Cleveland, then we head to Portland. Keep in mind, that was the event that was in Seattle. It has been moved to Portland, May 2nd and 3rd. After Portland, we're going to go to Dallas, May 16th and 17th. Legacy Open Series in Worcester, May 23rd and 24th. And then the Season 2 Invitational in Columbus, Ohio. Modern and Standard as the invitational formats, and a 2-day 20K Modern Open Series event tied to the Origins Game Fair, June 5th through 7th. The short season.
Very short. Will be over soon. But during the short season, you can pick up the Polar Punch playmat. That is available. Every player got it here. Every player got it in Syracuse. And it is free and limited until May 23rd. So come on down and get one of these.
Yeah, no strings attached. We don't mail them to you. They're available on site, and they are free with every entry to the 2-day 20K Open Series main event until May 23rd.
And these things are sweet. Who are we kidding? I'm a big fan. This is being the Season 2 playmat. Perhaps we'll have another one for you guys for Season number 3. More details to come. But this one is available to all Open Series competitors until May 23rd here, Season 2 of the Open Series. Appreciate you guys coming out and playing in all of our events. As we get ready for game number 3 here between Boswell and Barber. Barber able to tie things up. That combination of Den Protector plus Boonsader is a potent one.
And Boswell with a, kind of a slower, chunkier Abzan aggro draw, ended up dying with spells in his hand.
Which is something that can happen in that deck. We don't see it a ton, but it does happen.
Lands that come into play tapped, and the removal that is typically not available on until turn 3. Boswell with a couple copies of Ultimate Price in this list this weekend, but often it's not available until the 3rd turn. Ultimate Price also not a reliable turn 2 removal spell for Boswell in this matchup, because Ian's playing a lot of stuff face down.
Yeah, this is true. And a lot of morphs in Ian's deck. He's got 3 Stratus Dancers, 3 Den Protectors, 3 Rattleclaw Mystics, 4 Deathmist Raptors.
Stratus Dancer to me that's the card of the cycle I'm most interested in.
I think it's got to see play at some point. It's a pretty powerful card.
Den Protector is definitely very high in terms of raw power, but I think that Stratus Dancer potentially enables a wider range of decks.
Sure.
Any green value mid-range sword deck can easily slide in a Den Protector. Stratus Dancer may make a deck that otherwise wouldn't be viable a viable deck. Ian's deck is kind of in that space of, it's a tempo deck, it's a beatdown deck, it's trying to be a little bit tricky, and Stratus Dancer is possibly more critical for his deck than Den Protector even is.
I wouldn't be surprised if at some point all of that cycle saw play.
I think so too. I think
they're all good cards.
All totally constructed level cards. I think the poorest of the bunch is probably the red one, and the red one's still pretty good.
Yep.
For today, I need 2 more players to begin my last planner pod. And
well, players take a look at their opening hand. Boswell will be on the play.
Today, we will Picks back up at 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Looks like he's going to Kiki, and Barber is going to go down to 6 cards. See if he can find a better hand with this blue-green morph deck. You know, what's interesting about his deck is you don't find any of the gimmicky cards. Secret Plans, Trail of Mystery, Obscuring Aether. None of those cards hiding out here.
Well, his deck isn't really so much about I'm playing some stuff face down and I'm trying to unmorph it as soon as possible. I think Secret Plans wants to be in a deck where you're generating a bunch of mana, you have your mana creatures, Radical Claw, Mystic, and so forth, and you're just playing good stuff and unmorphing as soon as possible. Once your morphs become things like Den Protector and Strass Dancer, cards where you want to be waiting for a particular time to unmorph them, I think that Secret Plans becomes less attractive. It's still a very powerful engine for this kind of deck, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was something somewhere at some point during the standard season that got to use that card to good effect. But I think Ian's morphs are a little too tricky and timing sensitive to really be Secret Plan sort of morphs. With that said, it would insulate him a lot against Drown in Sorrow because of the +0/+1, and that's a card, you know, we've been talking this whole time. Ian's got to be scared to death of it because his creature base, it looks particularly vulnerable to that card.
Perhaps a good sideboard card for this deck.
Perhaps.
6 cards here for Barber. He's happy enough, it seems. Boswell will be on the play. We'll start with Andrew. And a Warden of the first tree off of a copy of Llanowar Waste. So he's down to 19.
Looks like Boswell's hand is just lands and Fleece Mane Lions.
Classic Boswell.
And another Fleece Mane Lion.
Classic,
Perfect.
classic Boswell. Here we go. Don't know if someone has cast more Fleece Mane Lions over the past calendar year than him.
Between this and the red-white aggro list and standard last year? Yeah,
Green-white aggro.
Green-white,
yeah.
excuse me.
There's a temple.
Boswell's got to love this playing a matchup where there's no copies of Bioblade. Opponent's playing a land that comes into play tapped on turn 2 and didn't do something on the first turn. This might be one of those easy mode games that just crank out 3/3s until your opponent dies.
Yeah, give him the beatdowns. He'll have to keep taking damage to cast these lines, but he doesn't care. Boswell draw.
He pays once. Ian pays over and over again.
Yes. Yeah, the beatdowns again. The follow-up. A Fleece Mane Lion. A Sandstep Citadel. A passing of the turn. Doesn't always have to be pretty, but it can be effective.
And Hunt the Hunted left over as the card in Boswell's hand, which is great for him here.
There's a morph. Outclassed on this board. Sandstep Citadel, the draw.
Boswell loves these decks where the quality of creature you get for the mana is very high. That's sort of the core of this strategy and the green-white aggro list from last year. And you can see why. I mean, you get games like this where your stuff's just better than what your opponent's doing. It's just faster. And it's almost impossible for them to catch up. It's nothing fancy.
Commander pod number 5, your event is ready to begin. Please come on.
There's the activation.
Commander pod number 5, reporting to
The morph. It was a Den Protector. It's gone. 6 damage will come across.
Hoping for the 0/6 there that lets him look at Boswell's hands.
Ah, the Dragon Eye Savant. One of my favorite morphs from that cycle.
Would have been a good spot for that card.
It would have been terrible. Would not have been terrible. There's an island passing the turn. Smell Collected Company coming. Collected Company coming. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Boswell with an Anafenza, Fleece Mane Lion, Sandstep Citadel in hand, Hunt the Hunter as well.
It's got a lethal board.
Well, perhaps the easiest place to start is just by attacking. We'll see what the boss decides.
None of the cards that he has in his hand affect things before combat. It's just 2 more creatures plus the Hunt the Hunted.
Anafenza.
And I guess Boswell doing this because he's going to cast it anyway, and it could trip up some some card drawing effects that puts creatures in the graveyard and Den Protector down the line. Probably doesn't matter, but
Collected Company. Rattleclaw Mystic, Heir of the Wilds, Boon Satyr, Chord of Calling, Temple of Mystery, so a couple of hits there.
some blockers.
Yep. I've seen worse.
If Boswell allows him to block.
Yep, that's going to happen.
So this is why the Anafenza got played before combat. Now everything's exiled and Den Protector loses some steam.
Barber will draw. He's still got some real work to do. The problem here is that Ian's creatures just naturally are so much worse than Boswell's.
Yeah, you get the feeling that for Ian to win the games, he kind of has to get out in front first and then kind of trip Boswell up along the way with things like Stratus Dancer and Den Protector and Boon Satyr and so forth. When he's not adding to the board, it's impossible for him to catch up because he's spending a couple turns there just kind of cranking out 2/2s and 3/3s. And Boswell's best draws just push that out of the game. He has 3/3s earlier. He has Hero's Downfall type effects. It's tough for Ian to claw back once he gets behind.
And that was really like the best Collected Company that Ian could have, which is trade 2 of my creatures for 2 of your creatures. Those are the kind of Collected Companies he has to have in this situation to be able to even keep up. If he finds things like Elvish Mystic or their mediocre threats, it's not going to get the job done. Siege Rhino in Andrew's hand now. That was the draw for the turn. That one's a doozy.
Well, it means either creature connecting now is lethal. So Collected Company has to be the card on Boswell's radar here. What's nice about drawing the Siege Rhino is that Ian kind of has to trade with both creatures again to get out from under this, and it's asking a lot.
And Offensive will put the counter on one of the first three, so it'll be a 4/4. Now here's Collected Company again. So in this situation, you have to find, Boon Satyr and Heir of the Wilds again, or something like that.
2 copies of Heir of the Wilds.
Hornet Nest, that's not terrible.
Hornet Nest would have been really good a turn ago.
Yeah.
But now I don't think it gets it done because of the Siege Rhino here for Boswell.
It's really too bad. Hornet Nest could have been a real beating. Hornet Nest and Den Protector are going to enter the battlefield.
And Boswell's got to be breathing a sigh of relief here because if that Hornet Nest was the card last turn,
Might actually be a really hard game to win.
yeah, that would have been possibly enough for Ian to turn this around. Now, Ian still has the option of just chumping with the Den Protector. He does not have to throw that in there. But chumping doesn't really get him that far because Warden's a trampler.
Yeah.
Or can become a trampler.
Yep. With that level 2 activation, trample and lifelink.
So this allows Boswell to give trample this turn, come across for 3, and then hopefully resolve the Siege Rhino next turn to get exactly lethal.
That looks to be the plan. So the Warden will now become a warrior. It's a human spirit warrior with trample and lifelink. And things are going to trade off in combat here. Yeah, a little bit of obscure exchange. Yeah, Boswell is going to place his creature in the graveyard. I was like, you don't lose any of them as far as I know. Your creatures are much better than his. Barber will get some insects from a Hornet Nest, but Boswell's not going to lose any of his stuff.
Modern challenge players, your next round of pairings are going up.
There are the 4 insects.
Please make your way to your pairings board.
Unfortunately for Barber, 3 is the number for his life total, as his opponent has a Siege Rhino in hand.
And Boswell still with the trampler in play as well.
Yeah.
So Boswell may be able to win this game just kind of straight up with what he has on the board, and even if he can't, the Siege Rhino very likely to finish it off.
Yeah, I had that Hornet Nest come the first time with Collected Company. We might have a different game here, but it coming the second time, not going to be good enough, it seems.
So this is an interesting game here because it looks like Boswell is probably going to win this game next turn. But Andrew was kicking the crap out of Ian early on in this game. Ian Mulligan, he had nothing going on the first turn or on the second turn. And you can tell if things broke a little bit differently with the Collected Company. This could have been a very, very different outcome.
Yes.
Like, it looked like this game 3 was not going to be competitive in the slightest based on Boswell's opening hand the first couple of turns. And it looks like Andrew's going to just barely squeeze out lethal in this spot.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can always take something away from the games that are played. You know, the takeaway here, I think, is the Collected Company is a lot better than I thought it was, especially in Standard. And the combination of Den Protector and Boon Satyr can be a lethal one against a lot of decks.
For sure. And these are all cards that are just kind of like fine on their own, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Collected Company you do have to build around, but a lot of the other components that are in Ian's deck are just fine cards to be drawing.
Yep. Den Protector is good. Death Mist Raptor, even though it hasn't shown up, is good. Air of the Wild is good. Ian gonna try to figure out how much he can attack for here. Looks like he wants to get a couple chip shots in.
Feel bad for Ian here because he's trying so hard to figure out what the math's like and how much he can afford to attack with, and it's probably all for naught, as I don't believe he has an answer to a Siege Rhino trigger.
Yeah, what's interesting too is I suppose, you know, there's no guarantee that Boswell plays Siege Rhino this turn. Just tries to offer up the win.
He would love to not run this thing into a disable stroke or some sort of
counter spell.
If he could find some other way to win the game this turn that doesn't involve casting the Siege Rhino, I think he'll definitely take it.
Well, he's just going to put the Siege Rhino on the stack, and that's going to do it. Andrew Boswell's going to win this game and match over Ian Barber 2-1. I'm sure they'll have a fun conversation about what's going on in Ian's deck, because Ian was 6-0 with a deck that we've never even seen before. Here's this blue-green morph deck. A valiant effort, but Boswell gets the job done with his Opposite Aggro deck.
And I think that Boswell can kind of appreciate what happened there, too. After game 1, it just looks like this matchup's going to be pretty easy. There's a huge discrepancy in the parallel of these two decks. You got to see Ian's deck really flex its muscles there in the second game, do a lot of cool stuff. And then game 3 was really competitive when after turn 3 it looked like Boswell was going to run away with that game, maybe win on turn 4, turn 5, and Ian was able to mount a bit of defense there, and if the Collected Company had yielded a Hornet Nest the turn earlier, maybe a different outcome.
Yeah, but we see the outcome as it is. Andrew Boswell, number 11 on our Season 2 leaderboard, is 7-0 and having another great run with Ops on Aggro.
Yeah, good to see him back playing the same deck that he